My stepmother stole my $15,000 college fund for her birthday party, my sweet revenge. I should have known something was wrong when I caught Melissa counting cash in my mother's jewelry box. Let me back up and explain how I got to that moment, because what happened next completely changed my relationship with my father and taught me that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. My name is Emma, and when this story takes place, I had just turned 15 and was already planning what I thought would be the perfect Sweet 16 party. My mom died when I was 12, and before she passed, she made sure to set up a college fund for me with $15,000. She always talked about how important education was, how it was something no one could ever take away from you. Dad had remarried Melissa 3 years after Mom died, and honestly, at first I thought things might get better. I was so wrong. Melissa is one of those women who looks perfect on Instagram but is completely different behind closed doors. She is 45 but acts like she is 25, constantly taking selfies and buying expensive clothes and makeup. She has this way of making everything about her, even things that should be about other people. When Dad married her, I was 13 and desperate for a mother figure, so I tried really hard to like her. The problem started small. Melissa would make comments about how much I ate, suggesting I might want to watch my figure for high school. She would reorganize my room when I was at school, claiming she was just trying to help me be more organized. She started wearing my mother's jewelry, saying Dad had given it to her, which hurt, but I did not want to cause problems. Then came the bigger issues. Melissa convinced Dad that I needed to contribute more to the household, so I had to do most of the cleaning and cooking. She said it would teach me responsibility, but really it just meant she could spend more time on her social media presence. She started an Instagram account called Melissa's Fabulous Life and was constantly staging photos around our house. But the worst part was how she treated my mother's memory. She packed away all of Mom's pictures except for one small one in my bedroom. She redecorated the entire house in this modern minimalist style that looked nothing like the warm, cozy home Mom had created. When I tried to talk to Dad about it, he would just say that Melissa was trying to make the house feel like her home too, and I needed to be more understanding. The Sweet 16 planning started when I was 14. I had been saving every dollar from babysitting and my part-time job at the local bookstore. I researched venues, made guest lists, compared catering options. I knew exactly what I wanted: a garden party at the community center with fairy lights and my mom's favorite flowers, white roses and baby's breath. I had been planning to use some of my college fund money to make it really special, maybe hire a DJ and get a nice dress. When I mentioned this to Dad, he seemed genuinely excited. He said Mom would have loved to see me have a beautiful Sweet 16, and that we could definitely use some of the education fund for the party. He said $2,000 would be reasonable for such an important milestone. I was so happy I cried. That was in January. My birthday is in August, so I had plenty of time to plan everything perfectly. Melissa seemed supportive at first. She even offered to help with some of the planning, which I thought was sweet. She looked at venues with me online and helped me put together a mood board. I started to think maybe we were finally bonding. But then strange things started happening. In March, I called the community center to book the date, and they told me it was already reserved. I was confused because I had specifically checked their availability calendar online just the week before. When I asked who had booked it, they said they could not give out that information, but suggested I try calling back in a few weeks in case the other party canceled. I was disappointed but not devastated. There were other venues. But when I called the second choice on my list, they said the same thing. Someone had already booked my date. And the third venue. And the fourth. I started to panic. How could all of these places suddenly be unavailable for the same date? I asked Dad if he thought it was just bad luck, and he suggested maybe I should consider a different date. But I had been planning for August 15th for over a year. All of my friends knew the date. I had already started working on invitations. Melissa was surprisingly helpful during this stressful time. She suggested I look into some higher-end venues, places I had not considered because I thought they were too expensive. She even offered to drive me around to look at them. I was touched by her support. That is when she mentioned her friend's event planning business. "You know, sweetie," she said as we were driving back from looking at a beautiful but overpriced country club, "my friend Jessica runs an event planning company. She might be able to help you find something really special. Jessica turned out to be this glamorous woman in her 30s who immediately started talking about all these elaborate party ideas. Ice sculptures, live bands, designer decorations. Everything she suggested cost at least 5 times what I had budgeted. When I explained that I only had $2,000 to spend, she looked at Melissa with this expression I could not quite read. "Well," Jessica said slowly, "for that budget, you are really looking at more of a backyard barbecue situation. Nothing wrong with that, of course, but for a sweet 16, most girls want something a bit more sophisticated." I felt embarrassed and started to doubt my original plans. Maybe I was being too childish, wanting a simple garden party. Maybe I should think bigger. Melissa jumped in with a solution. "What if we could increase the budget a little? I mean, this is a once-in-a-lifetime event. Emma, honey, how much is in your college fund again?" I told her it was $15,000, and Jessica's eyes lit up. Suddenly she was full of ideas for what we could do with a larger budget. A ballroom at the nicest hotel in town, a professional photographer, a 3-course dinner, live music. "But I don't want to spend all of my college money on one party," I said. Melissa patted my hand. "Of course not, sweetie. But maybe we could use a little more, say $5,000 total. You would still have $10,000 left for college, and you have 2 more years to save more money." It sounded reasonable when she put it that way. And the ideas Jessica was showing me were really beautiful. I started to imagine myself in a gorgeous dress, dancing with my friends in an elegant ballroom, having the kind of party I had only seen in movies. Dad was hesitant when I brought up increasing the budget to $5,000, but Melissa convinced him. She talked about how important this milestone was, how I had been through so much losing my mother, how I deserved something really special. She even offered to contribute some of her own money to help make it perfect. I should have been suspicious of how eager she was to spend money on my party, but I was just grateful to finally have her support. So we booked the ballroom for August 15th. Jessica handled all the details, the catering, the decorations, the music. Everything was going to be perfect. I bought a beautiful dress, sent out invitations, and counted down the days. That is when Melissa dropped the bomb. It was the first week of August, just 10 days before my party, when she made her announcement at dinner. "I have the most wonderful surprise," she said, practically glowing with excitement. "Jessica helped me plan something really special. We are throwing a surprise birthday party for me on August 15th. I nearly choked on my food. "But that is my birthday," I said. "I know, sweetie, but here's the thing. My birthday is actually August 10th, but Jessica found this amazing venue that was only available on the 15th. And since you are having your little party at the hotel anyway, I thought it would be perfect. We can celebrate together." "What do you mean, celebrate together?" Dad looked confused too. "Melissa, I thought Emma's party was at the hotel ballroom." "It is," Melissa said brightly. "But I talked to Jessica, and she said the ballroom was too big for just Emma's friends anyway. So we are going to have my party there too. 2 birds, 1 stone. It will be so much more exciting with more people." I felt like the room was spinning. "You want to have your birthday party at my sweet 16? "Our birthday party," Melissa corrected. "Think about it, Emma. You will have live music, professional catering, beautiful decorations. All the things you wanted, but even better because there will be more people to enjoy it. But I invited my friends. My classmates. They are not going to want to celebrate with a bunch of adults they do not know." Melissa's smile got tighter. "Emma, sweetie, I think you are being a little selfish here. This is a chance to have a really sophisticated celebration instead of some kiddie party with your little friends." That word, kiddie, hit me like a slap. I looked at Dad, hoping he would say something, but he just looked uncomfortable. "How much is your party going to cost?" I asked quietly. "Oh, do not worry about that," Melissa said. "Jessica is giving us a deal since we are using the same venue. It will only be about $3,000 more." $3,000 more than what? "Than what we were already spending on your party." I felt sick. "So you want to spend $8,000 total? That is more than half of my college fund." "Emma," Dad said gently, "I think what Melissa is trying to say is that this way, You get a much nicer party for just a little more money. A little more money? My voice was getting higher. That is $3,000 more than we agreed on. Melissa sighed dramatically. I really thought you would be more grateful, Emma. I am trying to make your party special, and all you can think about is money. Your mother would not have wanted you to be so materialistic. Bringing up my mother was a low blow, and she knew it. I felt tears starting to form, which made me angry at myself. I did not want to cry in front of her. Can I think about it? I asked. Of course, sweetie, Melissa said, but her tone suggested there was really only one acceptable answer. I went to my room and called my best friend Hannah. I tried to explain the situation, but even as I was talking, I realized how crazy it sounded. What kind of adult hijacks a teenager's birthday party? That is insane, Hannah said. Can your dad not do something? I do not think he understands how big of a deal this is to me. Well, maybe it will not be that bad. I mean, you will still have your party, right? Just with extra people. But I knew it would not be the same. This was supposed to be my day, my celebration with my friends. Now it was going to be about Melissa and her adult friends who would probably treat us like little kids. I decided I needed to talk to Dad alone, so I waited until Melissa went out for one of her daily shopping trips. Dad, I said, I really do not want to share my birthday party with Melissa. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. Emma, I know this is not what you originally planned, but Melissa has put a lot of work into making this special for both of you. But I put work into planning my own party. I have been planning this for over a year. I know, sweetheart. But think about it this way. Melissa is trying to include you in her celebration. She could have just planned her own separate party and left you out entirely. I would rather be left out than have my sweet 16 turned into something else. Dad looked uncomfortable. Emma, I need you to try to be more understanding. Melissa is part of our family now, and family means making compromises sometimes. What about what Mom wanted? She left me that money for college, not for Melissa's party. Your mother wanted you to have opportunities and experiences. A beautiful birthday celebration counts as an experience. I could tell I was not going to get anywhere with Dad. He had this way of reframing everything to make Melissa look reasonable and me look selfish. I had seen it happen over and over again in the 3 years since they had gotten married. So I decided to try a different approach. I would talk to Jessica directly and see if there was some way to compromise. I called Jessica's office and asked if I could meet with her. She seemed surprised but agreed to see me that afternoon. When I got to her office, I tried to be mature and businesslike. I explained that I was concerned about how my Sweet 16 was being changed and asked if there was a way to have 2 separate areas of the ballroom, one for my friends and one for Melissa's guests. Jessica looked uncomfortable. Well, Emma, the thing is, your stepmother is really the one handling all the details now. She has very specific ideas about how she wants the party to go. But it is my birthday party too. Of course, of course. But Melissa is the adult in charge of the budget and the planning. I have to follow her instructions. What exactly did she tell you? Jessica hesitated. She said you were really excited about having a more grown-up celebration and that you wanted to invite more adult family friends. I stared at her. She said I wanted that? Yes. She said you felt like your original plans were too childish and you wanted something more sophisticated. I felt like I was living in an alternate reality. That is not true at all. I never said any of that. Jessica looked genuinely confused. Oh. Well, maybe there was some miscommunication. You should probably talk to your stepmother about that. Can you tell me exactly what she has planned? Jessica pulled out a folder. Well, the theme is Elegant Evening, very classy and mature. The guest list is about 60 people, mostly Melissa's friends and some family members. The music will be more ambient and sophisticated, not really dance music. The decorations are black and gold, very chic. Nothing she described sounded like anything I wanted. Black and gold instead of the soft pastels I had chosen. Ambient music instead of songs my friends could dance to. 60 adults instead of the 20 teenagers I had invited. What about my friends? I asked. The people I invited? Oh, Melissa said you decided to keep the guest list smaller and more mature. She said you realized that mixing teenagers with adults would be awkward for everyone. I felt like I was going to be sick. Melissa had completely erased my party and replaced it with her own, and she was making it sound like it was my idea. Jessica, I said carefully, I never agreed to any of these changes. Melissa is lying to you. Jessica looked very uncomfortable now. Emma, I think this is something you need to work out with your family. I cannot get in the middle of family disagreements. I left her office feeling completely defeated. Melissa had outmaneuvered me completely. She was the adult, she was paying the bills, and everyone believed her version of events over mine. When I got home, Melissa was in the kitchen, humming happily as she looked through party planning magazines. How did your meeting with Jessica go, sweetie? She asked without looking up. You know how it went, I said. You completely changed my entire party without asking me. I did not change anything, Emma. I enhanced it. You are going to have a much more elegant celebration than you originally planned. You uninvited all of my friends. I suggested you might want to have a more mature guest list. You can always have a separate little get-together with your school friends later. It is my birthday, Melissa. My sweet 16. It is supposed to be about me. She finally looked up from her magazine, and her expression was not friendly anymore. Emma, I think you need an attitude adjustment. I have been trying very hard to make this special for you, and all you do is complain. Maybe if you were a little more grateful, people would want to do nice things for you more often. Grateful? You stole my party. I did not steal anything. I am paying for half of this party with my own money, which means I get a say in how it goes. If you want complete control over your party, you can pay for it yourself. Fine, I said. I will pay for it myself. Give me access to my college fund, and I will plan my own party. Melissa's eyes narrowed. That is not how it works, Emma. Your father and I are the custodians of that fund until you turn 18. We decide when and how that money gets used. It is my money. My mom left it for me. Your mother left it for your education. Birthday parties are not education. You just said we could use some of it for my party. We can use some of it for our party. The party we are planning together. I realized I was trapped. She had control of my money, and she was using it to force me to accept her version of my birthday celebration. I hate you, I said, and immediately regretted it because it sounded so childish. Melissa smiled coldly. I am sure you do, Emma. But hating me will not change anything. This is what is happening, and you can choose to be gracious about it or you can choose to sulk. Either way, the party is in 1 week. I ran to my room and slammed the door. I called Hannah and told her what had happened, and she was as outraged as I was, but there was nothing either of us could do. I was a minor, Melissa was the adult with access to my money, and Dad was completely on her side. I spent the next few days in a kind of numb depression. I could not believe this was really happening. I could not believe my sweet 16, the party I had been planning for almost 2 years, was going to be turned into a celebration for my stepmother. 3 days before the party, I was in my room doing homework when I heard Melissa on the phone in the hallway. She was talking to someone about final preparations, and I could tell she was excited. Yes, the black and gold theme is going to look amazing, she was saying. Very sophisticated. Much better than the childish garden party theme Emma originally wanted. I opened my door a crack to listen better. Oh, the money? Do not worry about that. I have been managing that whole situation very carefully. Emma has no idea how much we are actually spending. My heart started pounding. What did that mean? Well, the original budget was $2,000, but we are spending closer to $12,000 total. But Emma thinks it is only $8,000, so she will not ask too many questions until it is too late. $12,000. That was almost my entire college fund. How am I getting away with it? Easy. I have been slowly moving money out of her education account for months. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. She only checks the balance every few months, and I always have excuses ready. Car repairs, medical bills, house maintenance. Her father never questions anything I tell him about money. I felt like I was going to throw up. She had been stealing from me for months. By the time she turns 18 and gets legal access to the account, there will be maybe $3,000 left. But she will not realize it until after the party, and by then, what can she do? The money will already be spent. I grabbed my phone and started recording. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold it steady. The best part is, everyone will think she agreed to spend all this money on the party. So when she complains later, she will just look like an ungrateful brat who does not understand the value of money. Melissa laughed, and it was the most evil sound I had ever heard. Trust me, Jessica, I have been planning this for a long time. This party is going to be perfect, and Emma is going to learn that she is not the center of the universe anymore. I recorded for another few minutes as she discussed more details about how she had been manipulating the situation. She talked about how she had booked all the venues I originally wanted so I would have to use Jessica's services. She talked about how she had been monitoring my college fund balance and timing her withdrawals so I would not notice until it was too late. When she finally hung up, I sat in my room staring at my phone. I had evidence. Proof that she had been stealing from me and lying about everything. But what could I do with it? If I confronted her directly, she would just deny it or come up with some excuse. If I told Dad, he would probably find a way to rationalize her behavior like he always did. I needed a bigger stage. That night at dinner, Melissa was going on and on about how perfect the party was going to be, how everyone was going to be so impressed, how it was going to be the social event of the season. I am so glad we decided to make this a more grown-up celebration, she said, smiling at me across the table. Right, Emma? Are not you excited about how sophisticated it is going to be? I looked at her for a long moment. I cannot wait, I said. And I meant it. The party was held at the ballroom of the nicest hotel in town. Melissa had spared no expense. There were elaborate floral arrangements, a professional photographer, a string quartet, and a catered dinner that probably cost more per plate than most people spend on groceries in a week. I wore the dress I had bought for my original party plans, a soft pink dress that felt completely out of place with the black and gold decorations. All of Melissa's friends were there, dressed to the nines and treating the whole thing like it was some kind of high society event. A few of my relatives had come, but they seemed confused about why they were at what appeared to be Melissa's birthday party. Melissa was in her element. She had hired a photographer to follow her around all night, taking pictures for her Instagram. She was wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and she kept talking about how perfect everything was. About halfway through the dinner, Melissa stood up to make a speech. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I just want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with Emma and me, she began. When I was planning this party, I really wanted to create something special, something that would show Emma how much I care about her. I pulled out my phone and opened the recording app. It has been so important to me to give Emma the kind of sophisticated celebration that she deserves. I know some people might think it is unusual for a stepmother to put so much effort into her stepdaughter's birthday, but Emma is like my own daughter to me. I stood up. That is really interesting, Melissa, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Because I have something I think everyone should hear about how much you care about me. The room got quiet. Melissa looked confused and a little annoyed. Emma, sweetie, I am in the middle of making a speech. I know, I said. But I think this goes perfectly with what you were saying about how much you care about me. I held up my phone and pressed play. Melissa's voice filled the room. Well, the original budget was $2,000, but we are spending closer to $12,000 total. But Emma thinks it is only $8,000, so she will not ask too many questions until it is too late. The room was dead silent. I could see people looking back and forth between me and Melissa, trying to understand what they were hearing. The recording continued. How am I getting away with it? Easy. I have been slowly moving money out of her education account for months. 1,000 here, 1,500 there. Melissa's face had gone completely white. Emma, turn that off right now. By the time she turns 18 and gets legal access to the account, there will be maybe $3,000 left. But she will not realize it until after the party, and by then, what can she do? The money will already be spent. I could see my dad at the head table, his face a mixture of confusion and growing anger. My Aunt Susan, my mother's sister, was staring at Melissa with an expression of pure disgust. The recording kept playing. The best part is, everyone will think she agreed to spend all this money on the party. So when she complains later, she will just look like an ungrateful brat who does not understand the value of money. "Turn it off," Melissa hissed, but I could tell she knew it was too late. "Trust me, Jessica, I have been planning this for a long time. This party is going to be perfect, and Emma is going to learn that she is not the center of the universe anymore." I stopped the recording and looked around the room. Everyone was staring at Melissa, and the expressions on their faces ranged from shock to disgust to anger. "So yes," I said, "Melissa does care about me very much. She cares so much that she stole almost my entire college fund to throw herself a birthday party and then convinced everyone it was my idea." Dad stood up slowly. "Melissa," he said, and his voice was dangerously quiet, "is this true?" "Dan, I can explain," Melissa started, but he cut her off. "Is it true that you have been taking money from Emma's education fund without permission?" "I had permission." "You said she could use some of the money for her party." "Some of the money." "You said this party cost $8,000. The recording says $12,000. There were some additional expenses that came up." My Aunt Susan stood up. "Additional expenses?" "Melissa, that was my sister's money. She left that money specifically for Emma's education." "Emma is getting an education," Melissa said defensively. "She is learning about planning events and managing budgets, and she is learning that the adult who was supposed to protect her inheritance is a thief," my Uncle Mark said loudly. The room erupted in angry voices. People were standing up, pointing at Melissa, demanding explanations. The photographer stopped taking pictures and backed away from the chaos. In the middle of all the shouting, Melissa tried one last desperate move. "You all do not understand," she said, raising her voice. "Emma has been impossible to live with. She has been spoiled and selfish and ungrateful for everything I have tried to do for her. I was trying to teach her some important lessons about..." "About what?" Dad's voice cut through her excuses. "About stealing? About lying? About manipulating everyone around you? I was not stealing. I am her legal guardian, and I have the right to..." "You have the right to manage the money for her benefit," my Aunt Susan said. "Not to spend it on yourself. This party was for her benefit." "This party was for your Instagram account," I said. "You said so yourself in the recording. You wanted to show everyone how sophisticated and important you are." Melissa looked around the room desperately, but there was no one left to support her. Even Jessica, the event planner, was shaking her head in disappointment. "I think," Dad said slowly, "that this party is over." People started leaving immediately. My relatives came over to hug me and tell me how proud they were that I had stood up for myself. Several of them made pointed comments to Melissa about how disappointed my mother would be in her behavior. Melissa tried to salvage the situation by insisting that people should stay and enjoy the food they had paid for, but no one wanted to be there anymore. Within half an hour, the elegant ballroom was nearly empty except for me, Dad, Melissa, and the catering staff who were looking very uncomfortable. "We need to go home and have a serious conversation," Dad said to Melissa. "Dan, you have to understand, I was just trying to." "We will talk about it at home," he said firmly. The drive home was the most uncomfortable 20 minutes of my life. Dad did not say a word. Melissa tried several times to start explaining herself, but he just held up his hand to stop her. When we got to the house, Dad told me to go to my room while he and Melissa talked. I could hear them arguing through the walls, but I could not make out specific words. The conversation went on for over an hour. Finally, there was a knock on my door. Dad came in looking exhausted and older than I had ever seen him. "Emma," he said, "I owe you a huge apology." I started crying then, not from sadness but from relief. Finally, he believed me. "I should have listened to you," he continued. "I should have paid more attention to what was happening with your money. I trusted Melissa to handle the financial details, and that was a mistake." "What happens now?" I asked. "Well, first thing tomorrow, we are going to the bank to get a complete accounting of your education fund. Then we are going to figure out exactly how much money was taken and work on getting it back." "Can we get it back?" We are going to try. Melissa claims she can repay most of it, but we will have to see. And Emma, I want you to know that from now on, no one touches that money except you. When you turn 18, you will have complete control over it. Where is Melissa? Dad's side. She is packing. She will be staying at her sister's house while we figure out what comes next. I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that she was leaving, but also a strange sadness. Despite everything she had done, I had tried for 3 years to make our family work. Dad, I am sorry I recorded her without telling you first. Emma, do not apologize for protecting yourself. I am the adult here, and I should have been protecting you. The fact that you had to gather evidence to prove someone was stealing from you is my failure, not yours. Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Melissa's financial manipulation came to light. She had not just been taking money from my college fund. She had been using the family credit cards for personal expenses and had even taken out a small loan against the house without telling Dad. The final accounting showed that she had taken nearly $10,000 from my education fund over the course of 8 months. She had been very clever about it, taking small amounts at different times and always having believable excuses ready. Melissa did eventually pay back most of the money, though it took her several months and she had to sell a lot of her expensive belongings to do it. She and Dad got divorced 6 months later, and I have not seen or spoken to her since. The whole experience taught me some important lessons about trust and standing up for yourself. I learned that sometimes the people who are supposed to care for you can be the ones who hurt you the most. I learned that adults are not always right, and that being young does not mean you do not have a right to protect yourself and your interests. I also learned that my dad, despite his mistakes, really does love me and want what is best for me. It took this crisis for him to see how badly he had been failing to protect me, but once he understood, he stepped up and made things right. I never did have a proper Sweet 16 party. By the time all the drama settled down, I was almost 17 and it felt too late. But my friends threw me a surprise 17th birthday party in Hannah's backyard, and it was perfect. Just me and the people who actually cared about me, with fairy lights and my mom's favorite flowers and music we could actually dance to. The college fund is back to almost its original amount now, and I have added to it with money from my job. I am a senior in high school now, and I have been accepted to several colleges. I am planning to study business and finance, partly because this whole experience taught me how important it is to understand money and not let other people control your financial future. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing Melissa the way I did, in front of all those people at the party. They think maybe I should have handled it more privately, more maturely. But I do not regret it at all. Melissa was counting on my youth and politeness to keep me quiet while she stole from me. She was banking on the fact that I would be too embarrassed or scared to make a scene. She thought she could manipulate the situation and get away with it because she was the adult and I was just a kid. Well, she was wrong. Sometimes being young means you have not yet learned to accept unfairness quietly. Sometimes being young means you still believe that the truth matters more than keeping the peace. My Sweet 16 party was a disaster, but it was also the night I learned to fight for myself. And that might be the best birthday gift I could have gotten.